MMOs since their inception have existed to make money, is something that someone who has no idea what they're talking about says. No, their origins lie in the dark times, where computers were made of stone and were powered by hamsters, and the internet was a series of cups attached to strings. A time before computers and the internet were for mainstream normies and were used not for video games and not even pornography, but instead education. Ugh. The internet, as the public knew it back then, was mostly restricted to college universities and primarily served an educational purpose. And when these students weren't busy studying, they were just lackadaisically birthing the origins of what would become a multi-billion-dollar industry. Specifically, two men, Richard Bartle and Roy Trubshaw, are credited with creating the first form of the MMORPG, the multi-user dungeon, or MUD. Aptly named, these were dungeons that were experienced by users, multiple of them, and though they were text-based, they shared design elements that were fundamental to the genre, such as dungeons, multiplayer gameplay, character progression, and other similar RPG-like features. It was revolutionary, taking RPG lovers from their dank and dusty basements to their dank and dusty basements with a computer setup. Though quite archaic by today's standards, they share the same fundamental designs of any video game. You are offered obstacles and also satisfying ways to overcome those obstacles. And for the MMO, there's this dance of sorts between the developers and players because, of course, there's no finish line. When the players overcome these obstacles, new ones, and also more ways to overcome them, must be created, or else interest wanes. So this concludes the history of the birth of MMOs. They were not being sold, there was no money to be made, and the primary goal was simply to create fun experiences, and it wouldn't be long that they had started to gain popularity, actually have graphics added to them, and then of course with any innovation, financial incentive lurked closely behind.
For years, video games have been a popular pastime for kids and adults. But a new generation of games is taking things to a whole new level, and it's happening right now on the net. Erin O'Hearn is here with all the details on this. Erin?
Well, Jim, in the past...
The ways that developers monetize their games is a heavily contested subject, as it has significant implications on their success or failure. You know, monetization of things just make me sick, almost as much as poorly groomed genitals. When's the last time you gave your jingle bells some TLC? This year, it's time to deck the halls and your balls with the Performance Package 5.0 Ultra from Manscaped. Tame even the most unruly Christmas tree with its two interchangeable skin-safe blade heads for precision trimming and that super close shave. Perfect for making your stocking stuffers look their best. It also has this larger LED spotlight, which is kind of like Rudolph's nose, but for your testicles instead. And it's also waterproof, so you can do your holiday grooming in the shower, because nothing says festive like cleaning up your own Yule logs while you shave. It comes with the Weed Whacker 2.0, which takes care of pesky nose and ear hairs. And after you've tidied the bush, you want to keep your baubles happy with the Crop Soother Aftershave Lotion and the Crop Preserver Deodorant. What a holiday miracle. No itching, no razor burn, just smooth bells jingling all the way. And don't forget the two free gifts, the Boxers 2.0 and the Shed 2.0 travel bag for stashing all of your tools. Use my code MSS20 to get 20% off and free international shipping, because if your balls could talk, they'd be singing carols right now. Anyways, a great game can be made poor through a monetization model rife with predation bordering on scams, and developers, publishers, and consumers alike have collectively been working together and compromising and trying to find just the right way to fuck each other as hard as humanly possible. Everyone wants everything. The consumer wants great games free of paid influence at a cheap price. Publishers want as much money as possible. And developers want to be left alone and free from harassment on Twitter, but all three of these agendas have proven themselves to be incompatible with each other. It's like Twister. Everyone is bent out of shape, no one is entirely comfortable, there's loads of sexual tension, and everyone is drunk, apparently. As far as MMOs are concerned, it seems that just as how new features are added over time, so too are methods that involve paying money to skip them. And to understand this monetization model and what direction it's headed, we need to tackle one simple concept. What is the most efficient path to the giant pile of money? Many today lament of the long past golden era of the MMORPG, one that came into its fold around the late 90s and early 2000s with releases such as Ultima Online, EverQuest, RuneScape, Asheron's Call, Dark Age of Camelot, Star Wars Galaxies, and of course, World of Warcraft for one simple fact. Though at this point, they were all of course designed for financial gain, the method of doing so laid through addictive but fun game design and quality customer service. The payment model for these games was as follows. You buy the box, you pay the generally $15 a month subscription, and a $50 expansion every couple of years. Therefore, with this monetization model, in order to maximize profitability, the game must draw as many people as possible in order to sell as many boxes as possible and to gather as many subscriptions as possible. And when this pull for subscribers is a requirement, so too is quality game design. Game developers, or people who have dedicated their professional lives to the intricacies and nuances of game design, must constantly think of ways to keep their game engaging and their players engaged. Failing that, they risk losing them to another group of developers who can. This competitive environment favors the consumer because as competition increases, so too does product quality. Developers must fight each other for the players' time and money, as due to their time-consuming nature and expense, most can only afford to play one. Or, to put it simply, necessity is the mother of invention. But then came Patient Zero. One game had to come in and F it all up. The progenitor of the apocalypse that would start a chain of events that would redefine the industry. That's right, the fucking horse armor in Oblivion. Remember all of those foolish nerds who in 2006 were collectively losing their minds over cosmetic armor for their mount in a single-player video game? The doomsayers loitering on a street corner warning you to stop touching yourself because the end is nigh. Well, they were right.
You let that sink in.
Because after the horse armor came horses, after horses came other cosmetic-only items, after cosmetic-only items came actual items like armor and weapons, and after armor and weapons came currency, after currency, levels, unless it's classic World of Warcraft, because they did levels before currency. I told you so, by the way. Let's stop with the hyperbole for a moment here. Not all microtransactions are created equal, and it's not always that big of a deal. I'd be a liar if I said that I didn't play and enjoy games that can be considered rather heavy with microtransactions, in fact. And for games that I enjoy enough, yeah, I'll spend some money. I think that most people watching have done the same for games that they really enjoy, and it's simply where the path to the giant pile of money lies today. This video isn't meant to condemn all microtransactions across the board. It's more of an analysis in the context of a game that's largely defined by its addictive nature, as well as its focus on character progression that now sells you all forms of character progression. When the solutions to the obstacles are no longer most efficiently found with time, but instead your credit card, it puts into question the true intent of game design. Is it designed to improve user experience? Or rather, is it designed to improve its profitability at the cost of user experience? Do these inconveniences exist to be overcome with time and effort? Or do they exist to incentivize the user to spend money to solve? What exactly are the implications of adding different forms of character progression in a genre of game known for its addictive nature, and then constantly resetting and selling this character progression? Speaking further on the fundamentals of game design, the point is to outwit or outperform your opponent in some way on an even playing field. A game of chess is intriguing as you're witnessing a unique battle of wits between two different players. That same game of chess is made uninteresting if you can swipe a credit card when you're losing and buy queens. A 100-meter dash is interesting because you're watching two athletes push their bodies to their maximum, and it's made to be uninteresting if one of them gets to ride a horse. If a competitor can spend money to gain an advantage over those who don't, the playing field is no longer determined by time investment and skill, but instead financial investment. This betrays the very foundations of any competitive activity, and MMOs, much like most multiplayer games, are largely defined by their competitive characteristics, either directly through activities such as PvP, or indirectly through gear level, collections, and so on. One of the most common questions for any MMO is it too late to start? This is a question so prolific that it becomes rather annoying to its player base. Technically, of course, the real answer is no, but the real question they're asking is, did I miss the train? Is there any point in starting right now, or will I be too far behind? This question could very well be asked by someone who doesn't ever plan on competing directly against another player, such as PvP, or maybe something such as raiding. Maybe they just plan on questing, hitting the max level, and quitting, but still, this idea that everyone other than them is substantially further progressed disincentivizes them to play because they feel so far behind. Their options are far more limited. Their gear is far behind, meaning PvP will be an uphill climb. Getting into guilds will be tougher because comparatively they're less progressed than everyone else on the server. Purchasing things on the auction house is tougher as the economy has inflated, and so on. It's largely why fresh launches of MMOs are so exciting. As a new one launches, the floodgates are opened, everyone starts out together and exploring and discovering and solving the game. This itself is an incredibly attractive quality of the genre, but perhaps what is even more attractive is that it's all done together at the same time. Therefore, it stands to reason that the ability to pay for progression has a negative effect on the game and its community, as it removes this ability to play on an even playing field. A player is only as geared as everyone else on their server. Their mount is only as rare as it is on their server. The number of achievements they have is only as high as everyone else's. The amount of pets, toys, PvP rank. In every MMO, no matter the circumstances, the players are competing against each other in some way. This is especially true if you're playing an MMO that has ways of filtering and identifying people based on how progressed their character is. If two people apply for a dungeon or a raid, and one spends money in order to inflate their gear level, and the other one doesn't, the latter is disadvantaged, and they therefore have fewer opportunities. Their gameplay experience is indirectly negatively impacted due to their desire for an unadulterated playing field, or the fact that they are broke. The appeal from MMORPGs largely come from the fact that they are multiplayer. The gameplay at times can be extremely tedious, its reward structure is largely random, and the rewards you earn are eventually made to be irrelevant. Looking at it with cold logic, it appears to be a rather blatant waste of time, but due to the simple fact that it's multiplayer, there's value and weight added to every action or accomplishment. Gear matters because it allows one to perform better than others. The amount of currency they have matters so they can buy things from other people. How much they learn their class matters as they'll perform better in PvP combat. And the range of their collection matters compared to everyone else on their server. If you were to take the multiplayer aspect away from it, it would most likely kill the genre. So therefore, it stands to reason that anything that harms this multiplayer aspect, such as paying for character progression, whether that be levels, currency, or even cosmetics, can harm the game in varying degrees. And it's because of this that the entire genre has been thrusted into a world of controversy, as the most powerful item is no longer a sword, nor a trinket, or a staff. It's your credit card. And beyond that, a genre that revolves around microtransactions loses something arguably even more important: innovation. In the before times, when the primary monetization model was through box sales and subscription fees, the path to the giant pile of money was through addicting but fun game design. It was in the developers' best interests to create a memorable, fun, and exciting experience. However, this monetization model is now seen as archaic. It's microtransactions, which dictate not just what is made, but also what isn't. Did you know that StarCraft II, which sold millions of copies on its launch, was financially outperformed by a $15 horse mount in the cash shop in World of Warcraft? Did you also know that in BlizzCon 2023, that StarCraft, one of the flagship franchises that defined Blizzard and made it what it is today, didn't even have a panel? But it makes sense. Why would you have hundreds of people spend years designing a game when you can have a single artist make a mount over a weekend that will financially outperform a sequel to a franchise that defined a genre? Why has it now been 11 years since the last Grand Theft Auto? Where's the urgency to make new installments in a timely fashion if you can just milk the previous? In fact, in this sense, releasing a sequel now holds a certain amount of risk because it seduces your own player base away from an aged, but still, lucrative game. And it's not only their existence or lack thereof, but the quality of a product is determined by who it's influenced by, and who it's influenced by is determined by who makes the most amount of money. If the most lucrative path to money is no longer good game design and is instead microtransactions, its design is no longer in control of the people who've dedicated their professional lives to game design or the developers. It's now in control of people who have dedicated their lives into getting as much money out of people in a genre of game that's defined by its addictive nature. This is why, in many of these franchises now, instead of getting innovative game design, you get innovative ways of extracting money out of you, and you see this reflected when the quality of a product decreases while earnings increase. It's because the people in charge are no longer those who understand the product, because it's no longer required in order to earn money. This becomes more harmful the more monopolistic the genre is, as there are now fewer alternatives to turn to as their quality declines. In this way, the dominating success of World of Warcraft would both reinvigorate and stifle the genre.
What happens is, like with John Scully, John came from PepsiCo, and they at most would change their product, once every 10 years. I mean, to them, a new product was like a new size bottle, right? So if you were a product person, you couldn't change the course of that company very much. So who influenced the success of PepsiCo? The sales and marketing people. Therefore, they were the ones that got promoted, and therefore they were the ones that ran the company. Well, for PepsiCo, that might have been okay, but it turns out the same thing can happen in technology companies that get monopolies, like, IBM and Xerox. If you were a product person at IBM or Xerox, so you make a better copy or a better computer. So what? When you have a monopoly market share, the company's not any more successful. So the people that can make the company more successful are sales and marketing people. And they end up running the companies. And the product people get driven out of the decision-making forums. And the companies forget what it means to make great products. Sort of the product sensibility and the product genius that brought them to that monopolistic position gets rotted out by people running these companies who have no conception of a good product versus a bad product. They have no conception of the craftsmanship that's required to take a good idea and turn it into a good product. And they really have no feeling in their hearts, usually, about wanting to really help the customers. So that's what happened at Xerox. The people at Xerox PARC used to call the people that ran Xerox toner heads. And these toner heads would come out to Xerox PARC and they just had no clue about what they were seeing.
And for our audience, toner is what?
Oh, toner is what you put into a copier. Yeah, the toner that you add to an industrial copier.
The black stuff.
The black stuff, yeah. So basically they were copier heads that just had no clue about a computer or what it could do. And so they just grabbed defeat from the greatest victory in the computer industry. Xerox could have owned the entire computer industry today. Could have been, a company 10 times its size. Could have been IBM. Could have been the IBM of the 90s. Could have been the Microsoft of the 90s. So, but anyway, that's all ancient history. It doesn't really matter anymore.
Sure.
The amount of money that developers make and the quality of their game is often inverse, because if they are to make more money, that means the method of doing so are through this path. But one final question remains. What can be done about it? The answer lies in competition, as it once more steers the most lucrative option to be hooking players through fun and innovative and unique game design. The MMO industry, as it stands, is monopolistic. You have World of Warcraft, Final Fantasy, RuneScape, and then everything else. Really, right now, what's hurting the industry is a lack of competition, as the more competitive MMOs there are, the higher quality each developer needs to make their game because they're now competing once more for the consumer's $15 a month. But it's difficult. The genre just isn't as appealing as it once was, and a lot of this is completely out of control of the developers. Back when the internet was first being discovered by the mainstream, the concept of interacting with others in a virtual, persistent world was exciting. Not only this, but many other features that used to make the genre unique have been adopted into many other types of games. It's no longer unique to have a big world, or multiple forms of character progression, or RPG-like loot. And beyond this, one of its biggest draws, its social nature, has been sapped away by the evolution of social media. There's no one asking questions because the answers are immediately available with a simple Google search. Guilds and communities now interact through third-party software, which leaves a quiet and seemingly antisocial experience in the actual game. And not only all of this, but the industry remains to be monopolistic because a sizable portion of the player base is in the stranglehold of addiction, tribalism, and the sunk cost fallacy. It's no longer 2004. These games have been running for years, or decades even. It's easy to walk away from Call of Duty number 617 and go to the newest FPS release because Call of Duty number 617 is designed to end. The player base hasn't been playing this particular installment for 20 years. It's not so simple to walk away from something that A, you've been playing for the majority of your adult life, and B, is designed to never end, and C, is made to be addictive and to keep you from walking away. Not everyone who plays the genre are addicted, but there are people who love MMOs, but they hate leveling, so they buy levels. They love MMOs, but they hate grinding currency, so they buy it. They love MMOs, but they don't have the time nor desire to join a guild and learn raid progression, so they use that currency they bought to buy raid carries. They love MMOs, but they don't have time to learn PvP matchups, so they buy PvP carries. And they love MMOs, and they want their character to look cool, but they don't have the time nor desire to earn it, so they buy it. Nor do they want to grind out a cool looking mount or cosmetic set, so they buy all of this from the cash shop. They claim to love the game so much, yet still, they will pay an obscene amount of money to not play it. Some people just see something they like and they buy it, and that's it. There's no deep psychological analysis to be held. But the truth of the matter is that video game developers, particularly those within the mobile and MMO industries, have tuned into their structure and addictive qualities. There have been instances of developers teaming up with licensed psychologists who study the human brain and why and how people become addicted to games, and they design them to exploit that as much as possible. For Overwatch 1 in 2017, Activision Blizzard patented a matchmaking system where instead of matching players based solely off of skill level, which would result in a better user experience for everyone involved, the system would instead look at the playtime of your characters, determine what your favorite one was, and then try to match you against someone with the same main who has a skin that you don't have. This, of course, is done to subtly manipulate you into buying more microtransactions directly at the cost of user experience. Some countries luckily have tuned in to this predation, and they've started cracking down on the more addicting elements, such as loot boxes. Completely coincidentally, I'm sure, by the way, that Overwatch 2, now that the promised PvE mode has been yeeted, is basically the same game as Overwatch 1, the main difference being its payment model is now FOMO battle passes as opposed to the increasingly banned and scrutinized loot boxes. But I digress. And all of this isn't even getting into dopamine, where there's actually a chemically altering drug involved. And much like most substances, the more you use it, the more resistant you become to it. As the thrill of progression dampens, it's no longer as exciting, and to compensate for that, the player then turns to the conveniently placed microtransaction to achieve the same high. I love the MMO genre, and I think I always will. To me, it's the most interesting genre of game. It was social media before the term social media was invented. And maybe why I love it so much is because I was pretty spoiled. I had the privilege of playing it when innovation was not innovative, because that's where the path to the giant pile of money was. And as a result of this, each one seemed to be completely unique from each other. This video isn't meant to scare you away from them. They can still be really fun, particularly if you have friends to play them with. That itself can make up a lot of ground. MMOs and multiplayer games in general are kind of like a beer that tastes like urine. By itself, maybe it's not too great, but if it's with friends, it tastes just a little bit better, and they can also be incredibly addictive. This video isn't condemning all games that have microtransactions. There are great games out there that have them, and they don't automatically make them unplayable, and there's nothing wrong, in my opinion, with spending a few extra bucks on a favorite game. What I'm saying is that, at times, it can definitely be taken too far, and I think it's important to navigate them guardedly, especially if you are someone who has an addictive personality. Regardless of all of that, always remember that the most important thing is to like this video and to buy my microtransaction by becoming a channel member for a 3-day early access head start to all of my videos. But other than that, I'll see you in the next one. Peace.
Farewell for now, mortals. We hope you enjoyed today's video. See you again soon.